I don't think people realize how uncomfortable silence has become. Not dramatic silence. Not the silence that comes after an argument. Just ordinary silence. The kind that used to exist naturally between moments. Waiting for a bus. Walking home. Sitting alone with your thoughts. Standing in line somewhere. Driving without music. For a lot of people, those moments barely exist anymore. And what's strange is that most of us didn't consciously decide to remove them. They just slowly disappeared. A few minutes here, a few seconds there, until eventually silence stopped feeling normal and started feeling almost uncomfortable, almost wrong, like something was missing, like every empty space needed to be filled with something. A video, a podcast, a song, a notification, a message, anything. Modern life has become incredibly good at eliminating silence. And because it happened gradually, most people never noticed what was being lost. The moment we wake up, sound begins. An alarm, a notification, a video playing while getting ready, music during breakfast, a podcast during a commute, something in the background while working, something else while eating, then a show before bed. At almost every point during the day, there is some kind of input entering the mind. And after enough years, silence starts feeling unfamiliar. Not because silence changed, because we did. There was a time when boredom naturally created silence, and silence naturally created thought. You would sit somewhere with nothing to do. Your attention had nowhere else to go, so it turned inward. You reflected on things. You replayed conversations. You imagined futures. You questioned decisions. You noticed emotions. Not because you were trying to, because there wasn't anything else competing for your attention. Today that process gets interrupted constantly. The second boredom appears, distraction arrives. The second silence shows up, something fills it. And over time something interesting happens. People become less uncomfortable with boredom and more uncomfortable with themselves. Because silence doesn't just remove noise. It removes escape routes. When everything gets quiet, thoughts become louder. Questions become harder to ignore. Feelings become more noticeable. The things we've been avoiding suddenly become harder to avoid. And maybe that's part of why silence feels strange now. Not because silence is empty, because it isn't. Silence is often where the most honest parts of our minds live. The parts that don't get much attention when we're constantly occupied. You can see this everywhere. Watch what happens when someone has 30 seconds of waiting. An elevator ride, a checkout line, a traffic light. Almost instantly a phone appears. Not because there is something important to check. Most of the time there isn't. The action happens automatically, almost reflexively. A tiny moment of stillness appears, and the brain immediately reaches for stimulation. The habit is so normal now that it rarely feels unusual. But if you look at it closely, it's actually kind of fascinating. Human beings spent most of history existing with long periods of mental quiet. Now many people struggle with 30 seconds, not because they became weaker, because the environment changed. The modern world competes aggressively for attention. Every app, every platform, every feed, every notification. Thousands of people are constantly working to make sure your attention lands somewhere, and they're very good at it. Attention has become one of the most valuable resources on Earth, which means silence is constantly being challenged. Because silence doesn't generate engagement. Silence doesn't keep people scrolling. Silence doesn't create metrics. But silence does something else. It creates awareness. And awareness is often less comfortable than distraction. A lot of people discover this when they accidentally spend time away from their usual sources of stimulation. Maybe their phone battery dies. Maybe they're traveling. Maybe they lose internet access for a few hours. At first there's restlessness, a strange itch, an urge to reach for something that isn't there. The mind keeps looking for the next piece of input, the next distraction, the next thing to consume. And when it can't find one, something interesting begins to happen. Thoughts start resurfacing. Memories appear. Ideas emerge. Random observations become noticeable again. The mind starts generating its own content, something it used to do naturally. And that's when many people realize how little uninterrupted space they've been giving themselves. Not because they're busy, because they're occupied. Those aren't always the same thing. You can be incredibly busy and still have moments of silence. And you can be doing almost nothing while constantly consuming information. A person lying in bed scrolling for 2 hours might technically be resting, but their mind is still being flooded with input, still reacting, still processing, still consuming. There's very little silence inside that experience, and that's becoming increasingly common. Even relaxation often comes packaged with stimulation now. People don't just watch a movie. They check their phone while watching. They don't just listen to music. They browse something else at the same time. They don't just eat. They watch videos while eating. The mind rarely gets asked to focus on only one thing anymore. Everything happens alongside something else, and eventually constant input becomes the default state. Something similar has happened to conversations too. Many people no longer experience small gaps in dialogue. The moment a conversation slows down, someone reaches for a phone or changes the subject. Even social situations often feel filled to maximum capacity. Words, updates, reactions, opinions. There's always something being exchanged. Very little space is left for simply sitting together without needing to perform attention. What's interesting is that many people say they want peace. They want quiet. They want a break from everything. But when those moments actually appear, they often feel uneasy. Not because peace is unpleasant, because the mind has become accustomed to noise. Imagine living next to a highway for years. Eventually the noise becomes normal. The silence would feel strange. Not bad, just unfamiliar. Something similar seems to be happening psychologically. Many people have adapted to a constant background layer of stimulation, and when that layer disappears, it can feel uncomfortable at first. The silence isn't the problem. The adjustment is, because silence asks for nothing. It doesn't entertain you. It doesn't reward you. It doesn't distract you. It simply leaves you alone with whatever is already there. And for a lot of people, that's becoming a rare experience. There is another strange consequence of all this. When silence disappears, reflection often disappears with it. Not completely, but enough to matter. Some of life's most important realizations happen during unremarkable moments. A walk, a shower, a long drive, sitting by a window, looking at nothing in particular. These moments seem insignificant, yet they often create the mental space where understanding develops, where emotions get processed, where experiences settle into meaning. Without that space, life can start feeling strangely blurred. Days blend together. Weeks pass quickly. Experiences happen but don't fully register. Everything keeps moving. Nothing fully lands. Many people describe this feeling without realizing what they're describing. They say life feels fast. They say months disappear. They say they can't remember where the time went. Part of that might be because modern life leaves very little room between experiences. One thing immediately replaces the next. There's almost no pause, almost no silence. And without pauses, everything starts merging together. The strange thing is that silence hasn't actually disappeared. It's still available. The world didn't remove it completely. What changed is our relationship with it. We became less accustomed to it, less familiar with it, less willing to remain inside it for very long. The silence itself stayed exactly where it always was, in the spaces between conversations, in empty rooms, in morning walks, in late nights, in moments where nothing is demanding our attention. Those moments still exist. They just get filled faster now, almost automatically. And maybe that's why silence feels uncomfortable today. Not because human beings suddenly stop needing it, but because we've become less practiced at experiencing it. Like any unfamiliar thing, it feels strange when we encounter it again. Not dangerous, not harmful, just unfamiliar. And after years of constant stimulation, unfamiliar can easily feel uncomfortable. What's easy to miss is that silence never really changed. The world became louder. Our habits became louder. Our routines became louder. But silence stayed exactly what it always was. A space between things. A moment where nothing is asking for your attention. A moment where there is nowhere else to look except inward. Maybe that's why it feels so different now. Not because silence became harder to find, but because we've spent so much time learning how to avoid it. And after a while, avoidance starts to feel normal. The noise becomes normal. The distraction becomes normal. The constant stream of input becomes normal. Meanwhile, the quiet remains exactly where it has always been. waiting in the background, not demanding anything, not competing for attention, just sitting there. And that's the part people often miss. Silence never left. We simply